Mr. Speaker?
Minister of Education?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and I actually want to thank the opposition leader for those comments that he did make. Often we hear within the House persons saying, they've spoken to one person and that must be the experience of everyone. The member himself just spoke about traveling. He said he was in Germany, he was in the UK, and so obviously he had to fill out a travel authorization to get back to Bermuda, but he didn't mention that he had any issues with it coming back. And this is not to downplay anyone who has had issues with the travel authorization. We are listening. We are making the adjustments as we can. But Mr. Speaker, I want to say, hand over heart, overall, the travel authorization process has worked the way it was designed to work. I've spoken to persons, as a matter of fact, of the Miami flight that came in just earlier this week. I spoke to 4 people of that flight, and they were astounded that their travel authorization was they applied for it online and it was sent to them within 5 minutes. And they were fine to get on the plane, do their thing, get to Bermuda, do their antigen tests, and go about their way. So for every story, for every bad story, there are good stories as well. And so it's just a matter of finding that balance, Mr. Speaker. And it's not going to get any better if all we do is concentrate on the bad things. We have to have that balance through there. And I can say, as I said, hand over heart, that we are doing what needs to be done to curtail the issues with the travel authorization that the minority experience and address those. And it's a foregone conclusion that the travel authorization will remain. That has been stated. No matter how many times Michael, the MP from constituency 10, gets up and says we need to remove it, it will stay. So let's just work together and see how we can move forward with it versus continuously trying to start up or rouse up some conspiracy theory that it's not working for anyone, when that is simply just not the case, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, that wasn't what I wanted to speak to. I actually wanted to speak to how well we have come through our COVID issues and the joys that we've been seeing, or the freedoms that we've been seeing amongst our people over the last couple of weeks, as we've celebrated some events, Mr. Speaker. Because back in 2020, Mr. Speaker, the coronavirus, or COVID-19, as we all speak to it, almost overnight just changed the way that we operate within Bermuda. It impacted us in ways that we never thought in a million years that we would be impacted in, as it was representative of a once in a century pandemic that we were dealing with. Simple joys like leaving home was something we couldn't enjoy when we wanted to. We just couldn't leave our house when we wanted to. Shopping for groceries on the designated day was something you had to do. Working from home, something, that couldn't even have been fathomed 2 or 3 years before that. But yes, we were there. The interruption of our schooling for our children was one thing that really, as the Minister of Education, really stood out for me. Parents, as a parent myself, subbing for our teachers while we're trying to juggle the what we're doing on our work computer and what our children's doing on their computers. And so these are the things that really did affect us in 2020. And we've made some progress. We've come through it because COVID, Mr. Speaker, tossed everything on its head. Although we are still living with the pandemic, there is not any person in Bermuda that cannot deny that the most recent testing and the data that came from that testing shows us that we are still here with COVID. But however, that has not stopped us from living with COVID, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the days and the months and the years, yes, years, because we were talking about 2020, we're now in 2022, that has gone by. This government has fought a good and strategic battle against this. And while, as we just heard, our people are not completely happy, some people are not completely happy, we have all benefited from the rock-solid mitigation processes that have been put in place to ensure that we can, at some point, start to move toward what we would call normalcy. And Mr. Speaker, last Friday at the Bermuda Day Parade was a testament of how far we have come. Mr. Speaker, anyone who attended the Bermuda Day Parade or any of the events that happened later that night. I know there was a huge concert up in Dockyard and the like. We'll be discussing how well things went off, how well we've come through that for years to come, in my opinion. While the number of entries, Mr. Speaker, for the parade were not as high as in previous years, the ability for our people to get out, to march, to dance, to jump around to that rhythmic and hypnotizing beat of the gumbe drum was something that we all cherished. We watched, whether you were at the parade or watching on TV, and that's another thing to talk about, Mr. Speaker. For me, it was probably the first time I had seen such excellent coverage of the parade. And you could almost feel, people would say you almost feel like you were there, watching watching the coverage, watching people talk about, the commentators they had, Ms. Heather Whalen, Mr. Smith. They did an excellent job of commentating, Mr. Speaker. I've heard nothing but good reports from people when they speak of Bermuda Day 2021. And so for that, I believe a hearty congratulations is to go out to Minister Peets and his team at the Ministry of Youth, Culture, and Sports. They did a stellar job. They put together an event that will be remembered for years, and it will grow from strength to strength as long as we continue our strong leadership in mitigating what this COVID pandemic has brought upon us. But Mr. Speaker, for those who got up a little earlier on Bermuda Day and they got treated to the annual half marathon, I thought it was a great event. I was listening to the lead up to it, and I understand that there were more competitors this year than spectators that were allowed last year. I believe they said it was 900 plus spectators and 900 plus runners that took place in that event. So that's a testament of where we've come. I myself, I do my usual every Bermuda Day. Me and my family get up and we go down to the lane to watch the runners. But it was a special moment for me this year, Mr. Speaker, because my aunt was running. She had practiced for a year. She said this was on her bucket list. She really wanted to do it. So it was exciting to see her come through, as well as the other runners, as we all cheered and clapped. And we had just a good time, just meeting up with friends, similar to the parade route. What I've recognized is that people go to the same spots for the runners as well. And so you were meeting up with people you hadn't seen in all year. And so that was a great thing to watch, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to thank the runners for doing their best, everyone that completed the race or competed in the race. And thank you for helping bring that part of the tradition back to its full glory. But Mr. Speaker, what I really wanted to talk to involves me being the Minister of Education and, of course, a parent. I can personally testify and empathize with what our parents, what our educators, and what our students have gone through over the last 2 years to get to where we are and get to where we find ourselves, Mr. Speaker. We've had to juggle from keeping an eye on our students, as I said earlier, keep an eye on our students while they're doing their Zoom, while we're trying to do our Zoom work stuff. Our students having to adapt to classes without physically seeing their teachers, without physically seeing their friends. Our educators, almost overnight, going from teaching in front of a class to teaching in front of a computer. All of these things could not have been predicted, although it was something in our education reform we were working towards. The pandemic has made us accelerate that. And I just want to say a huge shout out to our parents, to our educators, and to our students who weathered that storm and have come through it. In addition to all these, Mr. Speaker, I can say that we managed to open our schools in September 2020, something many countries far bigger than us couldn't even begin to start doing. It was put in place with guidelines and restrictions that people were not happy with, but it helped us get our children back into the classroom. It helped us get our parents back into the workforce. It helped us get to the things that we all cherish, and that is, starting to move beyond the pandemic. These guidelines didn't make life inside our schools as easy as before. And as I said, there were some things that people had to adjust to for normalcy. But I would like to now fast forward to 2022, Mr. Speaker. 2022, where we are now, as we say, living safely with COVID within our schools. And for the first time in some schools since 2019, 3 years ago, our schools are starting to have those school events that really uplift our schools and bring that camaraderie back. I'm talking about experiences like sports days, graduations, leaving ceremonies, parents being able to visit students on campus, exhibits, and things along those lines that not only enhance school enhance the school spirit, but enhance the performance of our students and helps us to create these well-rounded students that we know that Bermuda needs in order to prosper. Mr. Speaker, I myself have made it a personal journey to try and visit as many of these events as possible over the last few weeks. I haven't been able to visit them all, but I've had the pleasure of visiting many agricultural shows at Francis Patton, at St. David's Primary, at West Pembroke, the Commonwealth Games Torch celebration at Paget Primary, sports days at Cedar Bridge Academy, sports day at the Barclay Institute, sports day at Whitney Institute, sports day at Francis Patton, and the crown of it all, our our inter-school sports day that we had for primary schools earlier this week, to see all of our schools, and that's public and private, not all of them, but the bulk of them, they're celebrating, competing against each other, the camaraderie of seeing them stand on the podium, get their medals, get their certificates, their ribbons to say that, they came. It was just a sight to see, Mr. Speaker, just looking up in the stands, seeing the parents cheering them on. It was just exciting to me to see that kind of return there, Mr. Speaker. And last but not least, Mr. Speaker, being able to attend the graduation of the students that crossed the stage at Bermuda College a couple of weeks ago. They have not been able to celebrate with their family in that since 2019, Mr. Speaker, and it was a beautiful thing watching them receive their diplomas and see the joy on their face as they do that. But Mr. Speaker, I understand, and I apologize that I just unable to make all of these events, but I want people to know here in the heart, as I'm sure the rest of Bermuda was. I do understand that it was a very successful sports day season with virtually every school except for a couple being able to put on sports. And so I'm looking forward to us moving from strength to strength when it comes to talking about that type of joy within our schools. Because the ability, Mr. Speaker, to get back to the normalcy brings a renewed passion for school. And that's something that we are sorely needed. We talk about things like COVID fatigue. COVID fatigue is a real thing, Mr. Speaker, but the excitement and the smiles on our educators' faces when I visited these events was priceless, Mr. Speaker. And I wish, and anybody who could have gone. A few MPs did attend to some of these events, and I'm sure they could speak. They could speak to exactly what I'm saying. Just looking around and seeing the sheer excitement of being out of the classroom, running around with my friends, my parents, they're cheering me on. Those are the things that we can take away from the excitement and the positive vibes that we're seeing now within our society. And Mr. Speaker, the one thing that I can point out is it is possible to have guidelines and regulations in place without sacrificing the fun and ethos of these types of events. Because, Mr. Speaker, as we're getting on and moving on with living with COVID, over the next 4 weeks, we'll start to see leaving ceremonies. We'll start to see celebrations. We'll start to see graduations for those. And as I did with the sports days, with the mini ag shows, with all those other events, Mr. Speaker, I have had my office reach out to every single school because I'm going to try and attend every single leaving ceremony, every single graduation I can physically attend. And I encourage members within these chambers to try to do that as well, especially schools within your constituencies. Our students have come through a lot, Mr. Speaker. Our educators have come through a lot. Our parents have come through a lot, and they all deserve our support and congratulations for moving on to that next stage, whether it's graduation from one of our senior schools or it's a leaving ceremony that takes them to the next stage of their evolution within the Bermuda public school system. They deserve our celebration, and they deserve us to be there to celebrate them as well, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I started this off by giving a recap of where we started, the change of life as we now know it as a result of COVID. And I wanted to conclude with showing how our schools have grown to live with COVID, and we're striving to get back a degree of normalcy. Mr. Speaker, COVID-19 is going to be with us for a long time. Let's just put that out there. So, however, we've seen, you just need to be careful about protecting yourself. But what we've seen over the last few weeks, doing that does not mean you cannot live your life. Our students, they're excited, and they've benefited from these events, just like I've been talking about just now, Mr. Speaker. And we want to continue to move forward. We want well-rounded students. We want a rewarding school experience for our students, and I believe we are in the process of moving back towards doing that for them. Mr. Speaker, Bermuda has weathered the storm with steadfast and steady leadership to deal with this COVID pandemic. We are now reaping the rewards despite the negative sayings that we do get from people about things like the TA and why I got to wear a mask when they go here. But we are reaping the rewards of steadfast leadership in the face of the COVID pandemic. And we will continue to move from strength to strength, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, and you see I got especially dressed just for you. I, like everyone else in Bermuda, is looking forward to when St. George's lifts that Cup Match trophy later this summer. I, along with the majority of Bermuda, I am quite sure that we are looking forward to that day, Mr. Speaker.
Hold on, Mr. Speaker, the honorable members of the House.
Yes, sir. He was on a good wicket all this time until that come in.
Mr. Speaker, in the coming weeks, we'll see things like Heroes Day holiday. I'm sure that will bring more celebrations, and as we show how we can continue to move along and live safely with COVID. Mr. Speaker, I'm personally excited for the future, and I'm excited for our country as we are embracing moving along, Mr. Speaker. Again, those who got a chance to see our children beaming over the last few weeks will realize how far we have come, Mr. Speaker. I look forward to these positive movements. I look forward to us moving forward and dealing with COVID. I look forward to us continuing strong and steady leadership as we navigate towards exiting from this pandemic, which will probably be with us for another year or so, Mr. Speaker. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I just want to thank Bermuda for standing by us and coming through this fire with us over the last 2 years to get us to where we are today, Mr. Speaker, in a much better place living with COVID. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister.
Mr. Speaker.